Hey guys, welcome back to One Man's Tracks. Today I'm starting a brand new segment. This is where I'm going to go through all the albums that I've picked up, thought were cool looking when I first stumbled upon them. After a few listens, didn't think they were quite worth fully diving into, breaking down track by track and diving into the past and getting some context of where the album came from and what the guys were thinking when they made it. It gets a little much, and I pick up a lot of albums that I don't get a chance to talk about on the main review side of things. So I'm gonna jump into a new segment we're gonna be calling Goodwill Dumping. I gotta take advantage of the fact that my name is Will and I shop at thrift shops, and today I'm talking about some albums that I'm dumping back to the local shops. Starting out with probably my favorite of the bunch today. This is Seven Mary Three's debut album, technically, kind of. American Standard. They had an album come out before with basically the same track list, but I guess this is their major label debut. It's Mammoth Records. Starts you out with a great rockin' track. I think it was a top 10 single. Water's Edge. Just growly vocals and just that gruffness, that rockiness that you kind of expect from 1995. Then their number one beautiful post-grunge rock mashup, Cumbersome. I have become cumbersome. These Virginian boys had a great sound going, but it's not quite consistent. It turns into a bit of a droning, drawly rock record by the end of it. Sure, Devil Boy, My are decent, kind of nickel-plated rock numbers. I think it's funny they got a track called Headstrong. Margaret is one of the catchiest tracks here, but it's sort of about forced pedophilia. I think it's a 16-year-old girl trying to get a guy to marry her that, sure, he likes her, but it's basically a threat from her father that if he doesn't, that he's gonna get murdered, but it's underage girl that wants kids with him. It's really, really complicated. It's not a great song that I wanted to get too deep into, and now I have, but either way, I'm gonna move on. It's catchy as hell, I'm sorry. Punch In, Punch Out is like kind of more a cappella, stomping Celtic rocker that's a lot of fun, but overall, I don't get much else out of this, so that's the first one heading to the dump. Quickly, I want to talk about some guys from Regina. This is a very obscure album that I picked up. Evanid, Likely to Disappear, and man, I dare you guys to try to find some of their stuff online. It's not there, for as far as I'm concerned. I can't even tell what half these guys are doing with their lives now, but interesting pickup that's kind of in the same vein as all these other albums. This kind of Canadian alt rock, or I think it's actually from 2003. It might be the newest album that I'm talking about today, but can't find the guys. I googled all of them, and they're not making music, that's for sure. Now on to a band that I tried to get further into. I actually bought the album that comes before this album, and I didn't even find that nearly as enjoyable as this one. It touches on some similar points. This is another band from Saskatchewan. This is The Age of Electric, and this is their fifth album, Make a Pest a Pet. It starts off with a great sort of pop punk rocker that is titled Remote Control, and it feels like it relies a bit on the Styx' classic Mr. Roboto riff. You hear it, I can't get it out of my head once I hear it, but the track itself does rock pretty hard, and I enjoy it as an opening track. They follow it up with the song I Don't Mind, and I don't mind it either. It's kind of almost pop rocky. It's a mashup, I'd say, between the sound you get from the Bare Naked Ladies and Panic at the Disco. Interesting track. It's certainly worth a check out. I've linked all the tracks in the description that I talked about. Probably, hopefully, full album listening experience as well, but I would like to also highlight, I think it was called Nothing Happens. Yeah, the first three tracks are pretty great here. It's not the best of the three, certainly, but it's worth noting. And then You Complain is more of a country rock vein. They album itself is a sort of not unenjoyable pop rock experience. It just lacks a lot of the kick that the first few tracks have, and I just didn't find it worth going into any deeper. And my version skips a bit. Whoever gave this to me didn't take good enough care of it. Man. Now, onto Soul Asylum. This is their 1995 release, their 7th album, Let Your Dim Light Shine. They actually released their most recent album, their 12th album, last year, so if you are a Soul Asylum fan and you haven't been keeping up, they're still at it, man. This is the follow-up to their hugely successful Gravediggers Union album, which contained the hit Runaway Train. If you want to jog your memory a bit, that's what these guys are probably most known for. This album, you might remember the first track. It's got the Frustrated Incorporated little hook in the opening track, Misery. Just a fun, punky pop rocker that opens the thing up. Hopes Up is a solid, lighter pop rock track, and it's followed up by Promise is Broken, which is a more standard kind of soft rock number. Maybe a little bit of folk rock, psych rock influences tickling in there. String of Pearls has got a goofy narrative, another stolen riff that I can't quite place, just another kind of classic rock feeling track. And then the last song I want to point out is a song called Caged Rat. It's got this great chorus that totally contrasts the sort of CCR approach that the rest of the verses have, but you're hit with the rat, caged rat, caged rat, caged rat, caged rat, little punk rock chorus there. I dig it quite a bit. It is decent, but it's mostly just softer, classic rock influenced pop rock, and it's gotta be dumped, guys. Someone else will enjoy this more than me. Speaking of classically influenced, sort of softer rock, here we have SLOAN, One to Another. These Halifax boys come out with their 3rd full-length studio album through Murder Records in 1996. I do enjoy the album, but it's not quite up to the standard. It really does remind me of Jet's album, Get Born, that I reviewed recently, that came out almost 10 years? No, not quite 10 years, maybe 8 years after this album. That album is chock full of great energy, high-hitting, catchy songs, and this does have that catchy, Beatles-esque feeling of fun, playful beachiness, but it doesn't quite hit as hard and doesn't stay as consistent as that Jet album. But the first track, The Good in Every One, hits. It's fun, it's light, it's catchy, very Jet-like. Then you've got the sort of Sgt. Pepper's ripoff, Autobiography. Decent track, though. The self-aware G turns to D, just talking about the progression in the song on the guitar, and then A-side wins being the last track on the first side if you have the record version of this. But I don't know, the lines you amend, the 9th track is alright, but I think the last track that I want to mention here is probably Take the Bench. It's fuller, bigger, it's got some great trumpets in it, the horns are just punchy great, and that's all she wrote for this album for me. I hope you enjoyed the first edition of Goodwill Dumping. These albums are heading to the thrift shop. They're gonna find a new home. Someone will enjoy them more than I did, like I said. Maybe you can. I've linked all the music down below, highlighted those tracks that I want you to really have a good dig into and certainly enjoy for this week while I'm putting together another full review that you can dive into even deeper over there. There's a video there, probably a playlist here, maybe a link to subscribe right over my face to block out all these titles or make it hard to see, whatever I'm trying to do. I love you guys, take good care, and I'll see you next week.